This story is titled, My Mom Tried to Force Me to Give Up My College Fund to My Stepsister because She Deserved It More. But then my dad's secret letter arrived and changed everything. Now she's begging me to share. But I refused. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. So, I guess I've always known my family wasn't normal, but I didn't realize just how messed up things were until I was 8 years old. My dad, Alan, was one of those people who worked his butt off to give me and my mom everything we could ever want. He was a software engineer, always busy, but he'd still make time to help me with school projects or take me out for ice cream on weekends. To me, he was like Superman. Then there was my mom, Rachel. She was the complete opposite of Dad. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't a bad mom back then. At least, not in the obvious ways. She was always around, smiling and laughing, organizing fancy dinners or parties for her friends. People loved her. But looking back, I think she cared more about how she looked to other people than how she actually treated us. The first sign that something wasn't right came late one night. I had woken up thirsty and went downstairs to get a glass of water. That's when I saw her in the kitchen, talking on the phone. She was laughing in this weird way, like she was trying too hard. I remember stopping in my tracks because I thought she was talking to Dad, but then I heard her say, "Oh, Greg, stop it." Greg wasn't just some random name. He was my dad's co-worker. I'd met him a few times when he came over for BBQs or game nights. He always brought snacks and told lame jokes, so I didn't think much of him at the time. But that night, something about the way my mom said his name gave me a bad feeling. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I mean, I was 8. What did I know about relationships or what adults were supposed to act like? But over the next few weeks, I started noticing more. My mom would get dressed up to run errands or go to book club. She'd spend hours texting on her phone, smiling at the screen like she was in a romantic movie. Then one day, she said she was going to a yoga class. I don't even know why, but I decided to follow her. I mean, it didn't make sense. My mom hated yoga. I remember riding my bike down the street, keeping a good distance behind her car, terrified she'd see me. She didn't go to yoga. Instead, she went to this fancy restaurant downtown, the kind with the white tablecloths and candlelight. I parked my bike around the corner and peeked through the window. There she was, sitting across from Greg, laughing and holding his hand. It felt like my stomach dropped out of my body. I didn't really understand what it all meant, but I knew it wasn't good. When I got home, I sat on my bed for hours, debating whether to say anything. Dad was such a good guy. He didn't deserve this. Eventually, I told him. At first, he thought I must have misunderstood. Maybe she was just catching up with an old friend, he said. But when I showed him some texts I'd seen on her phone, things like, "I miss you already," and "Can't wait until our next night together," he went completely silent. That's when everything fell apart. Dad didn't yell or freak out. He figured that it was like every time he was working late, trying to save for my future, she was sneaking around behind his back. When Dad confronted her, she denied it at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Photos, texts, receipts for fancy dinners. She finally admitted to it, but instead of apologizing, she flipped the script and said, Dad's long hours were the reason she cheated. Like it was his fault for working too hard to give us a good life. The divorce happened fast. Mom got custody of me, not because she deserved it, but because she played the perfect victim in court. She told the judge all these lies about Dad being emotionally distant and unsupportive. I didn't have a say in it because I was too young, but I wanted to scream the truth. After the divorce, my mom's attitude toward me completely changed. I think she resented me for being close to Dad, for siding with him. She never said it outright, but you could feel it in the way she treated me. I was like a guest in my own house. The real blow came 2 years later when Dad died. He had a heart attack while driving home from work. It was so sudden, I didn't even get to say goodbye. I remember sitting in my room, clutching this old sweater of his that still smelled like him, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. While I was grieving, my mom moved on faster than I thought possible. 2 months after Dad's funeral, she married Greg. 2 months. She didn't even wait long enough for the flowers on Dad's grave to wilt. I was forced to be in the wedding, wearing this ridiculous pink dress, smiling for photos while they danced and laughed like they'd just won the lottery. My dad was gone, my mom had betrayed him, and now I was stuck living with the people who had torn my life apart. At 10 years old, I realized something no kid should ever have to learn. The people who are supposed to love you the most can also hurt you the worst. Living with Mom and Greg was like stepping into enemy territory. It was the way they acted, like this was their world now, and I was lucky they let me exist in it. I had no say in anything anymore, and it didn't take long for me to figure out I was on my own in this so-called family. Greg brought along his daughter, Laura, who was my age but might as well have been from a different planet. From day one, she made it clear she wasn't interested in playing house. She walked into my room, our room, like she owned the place and started moving my stuff around without asking. "This side's mine," she announced, dumping her suitcase on my bed and shoving my books onto the floor. I didn't say anything because, honestly, I didn't know how to respond. I just picked up my books and moved them to the tiny desk in the corner. It was easier to let her have her way than to fight about it. Laura wasn't just bossy, she was a full-on bully. Every day she found a new way to remind me that this wasn't my house anymore. One time, I came home from school and found my dad's old sweater, the one I used to sleep with because it still smelled like him, shredded in the trash. I stood there staring at it, trying to keep the tears from coming. When I asked her why she did it, she just shrugged and said, "It was gross and old. You should thank me for getting rid of it. Mom didn't do anything about it." When I told her what Laura had done, she waved it off. "You're too sensitive," she said. "It's just a sweater. You need to stop living in the past." Living in the past? My dad had been dead for 2 months. I wasn't clinging to some ancient history. I was still grieving. But Mom didn't see it that way. She was too busy pretending everything was fine, parading Greg around like a trophy husband. Greg wasn't any better. Actually, he was worse. He treated Laura like a princess, showering her with expensive gifts and acting like she could do no wrong. She got new clothes, new gadgets, even a fancy watch for her birthday that probably cost more than all the furniture in my room combined. Meanwhile, I got nothing. Not that I wanted anything from him, but it was the principle of it. He didn't even try to hide the favoritism. "Laura deserves nice things," he told me once when I asked why she got a new iPad and I didn't even get school supplies. "She works hard." I wanted to laugh in his face. Laura didn't work hard at anything except making my life miserable. She barely did her homework, spent most of her time on social media, and had a meltdown if she didn't get her way. But yeah, sure, Laura deserved it more. Sharing a room with her was a nightmare. She had no sense of boundaries and zero respect for my stuff. She'd take my clothes without asking and then ruin them. She once spilled nail polish all over my favorite hoodie and didn't even apologize. "It's just a hoodie," she said with a shrug, like that made it okay. She'd also bring her friends over and act like I didn't exist. They'd sit on her bed, laughing and talking about people from school, and I'd be stuck in the corner trying to do my homework. If I asked them to keep it down, they'd just laugh and make fun of me. "You're such a nerd," Laura said once. "No wonder you don't have any friends." That one hurt, because it was true. I didn't have friends. Not anymore. After the divorce, I'd stopped hanging out with people from my old school because I didn't want to explain what was going on at home. And now I was too busy studying and trying to keep my head above water to make new ones. Mom and Greg didn't care about any of this. To them, Laura could do no wrong. If I ever complained, they acted like I was the problem. "You need to learn to get along," Mom would say. Like it was my fault Laura was a nightmare. Greg didn't even pretend to care. "Teenage girls," he said once when I tried to tell him about Laura stealing my stuff. "They're all the same." But we weren't the same. I wasn't sneaking out at night or throwing tantrums when I didn't get my way. I was just trying to survive in a house where no one wanted me. The only thing that kept me sane was school. I threw myself into my classes, spending hours studying and doing extra credit. My dad always said education was the key to a better life, and I was determined to make him proud. Mom acted like she was proud of me, but it was all for show. Whenever her friends came over, she'd brag about my grades and talk about how dedicated I was. But when it was just us, she didn't care. If anything, she seemed annoyed by how much time I spent on schoolwork. "You're always hiding in your room," she said once. "You should spend more time with the family." What family? Greg and Laura weren't my family. They were strangers who had taken over my house and turned my life upside down. I started keeping my distance from all of them. I ate dinner as fast as I could and then went back to my room to study. I kept my things hidden at all times because Laura had a habit of snooping through my stuff. One time, I caught her reading my journal and laughing with her friends about it. After that, I started hiding it under my mattress. The more I pulled away, the worse things got. Mom would snap at me for the smallest things, like forgetting to do the dishes, or not saying thank you when Greg handed me the salt at dinner. She acted like I owed them something, like I should be grateful they even let me live there. I started counting down the days until I could leave. College felt like my only way out, and I was determined to make it happen. I knew my dad had left me a college fund, and I clung to that like a lifeline. Every night, I'd sit at my tiny desk, surrounded by textbooks and notebooks, and remind myself why I was doing this. I wasn't just working for my future, I was working for his. My dad had given everything to make sure I had a chance at a better life, and I wasn't going to let Mom and Greg take that away from me. This wasn't my home, and these weren't my people. I was just a guest, waiting for the day I could walk out the door and never look back. By the time I was in my senior year of high school, I was already mentally checked out of that house. I'd perfected the art of avoiding everyone, Mom, Greg, and especially Laura. I spent as much time at school as I could. I joined every club that would let me hang around after hours, volunteered at the library, and even took extra shifts at my part-time tutoring job. The less I was home, the better. But then college acceptance season came around, and everything blew up. I had been working toward this moment for years. I stayed up late studying, gave up my weekends to prepare for SATs, and poured my heart into my applications. When the acceptance letter from my dream school arrived, I opened it in my room with shaking hands. I read the words, "Congratulations, you've been admitted," over and over, until they felt unreal. I sat on my bed clutching the letter, tears running down my face because I knew this was my ticket out. Mom barely acknowledged it when I told her. "That's nice," she said, not even looking up from her phone. Greg just grunted something about how college wasn't such a big deal anymore because everyone goes. Laura, of course, had to chime in with, "Wow, you're really milking this, aren't you?" I didn't care. I had one foot out the door, and that was all that mattered. Laura, on the other hand, wasn't having the same luck. She'd barely scraped through high school, and even that was a miracle considering how much school she skipped to hang out with her friends. Her grades were awful, and the only place that accepted her was the local community college. She threw a full-blown tantrum about it. I came home one day to find her crying on the couch, yelling at Greg about how it wasn't fair. "Why does Nora get to go to a fancy school and I'm stuck here?" she whined. Greg, as usual, tried to soothe her by promising to buy her something expensive. "It's not fair," she said later that night while I was trying to do my homework. She stood in the doorway to our shared room, glaring at me like I was the reason her life sucked. "You think you're so much better than me just because you got into some stupid school." "I don't think I'm better than you," I said, keeping my voice calm even though my hands were shaking with anger. "I just worked hard for this," she rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You're not special, Nora. You just got lucky." I wanted to scream. Lucky? There was nothing lucky about staying up until 3 a.m. studying while she was out partying. But I knew arguing with her wouldn't change anything, so I just turned back to my books and ignored her. That's when Mom decided to get involved. One night, she called a family meeting. I should have known it was going to be bad, because she never bothered with things like that, unless she had some manipulative plan in mind. We all sat in the living room, me on the armchair, Laura sprawled out on the couch like she owned the place, and Greg half paying attention while scrolling through his phone. Mom stood in front of us, her hands clasped like she was delivering some grand speech. "We've been thinking," she started, her voice all syrupy sweet, "and we believe it's only fair for you to share your college fund with Laura." I blinked, sure I had misheard. "What?" "You heard me," Mom said, her tone sharpening. "Your father wouldn't want you to be selfish with the money he left behind. He'd want you to help your sister." "She's not my sister," I snapped before I could stop myself. Greg finally looked up, glaring at me. "Don't be disrespectful. Laura's your family now, whether you like it or not." Laura, of course, was sitting there smirking like this was all going according to plan. "It's only fair," she said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "You don't need all that money, and I deserve a chance too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just entitlement. It was delusion. That money wasn't theirs to take. It wasn't Mom's, it wasn't Greg's, and it definitely wasn't Laura's. My dad had worked his ass off to save that money for me. "That's not happening," I said firmly. Mom's smile disappeared, replaced by that fake disappointment she used when she wanted to guilt me into something. "I can't believe how selfish you're being," she said, shaking her head. "We've done so much for you, Nora, and this is how you repay us?" "Done so much for me?" I said, my voice rising. "You mean giving me a roof over my head? Feeding me? That's literally your job as a parent." Greg jumped in then, his voice dripping with condescension. "You need to grow up, Nora. Life isn't all about you. It's about family." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the people who treat me like crap every day? The ones who shredded my dad's sweater and called me a charity case? That family?" Mom's face turned red. She hated it when I brought up Dad because it made her look bad. "If you don't share the money, you're going to tear this family apart," she said, like that was my problem. "That's on you, not me," I said, standing up. "I'm not giving you a single penny. This isn't your money. And it never was." I walked out before they could say anything else, slamming the door to my room so hard the walls shook. My heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock my phone to call Aunt Deborah. I told her everything, and she was furious. "Your dad didn't save that money for them," she said. "He saved it for you. Don't let them bully you into giving it up." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I won't, I said, though I wasn't sure how I was going to get through this without losing my mind. The next few days were awful. Mom and Greg kept trying to corner me to talk, but I refused to engage. Laura started sending me nasty texts, calling me greedy and selfish. I ignored her, but it was hard not to let it get to me. Every time I walked into a room, I could feel them staring at me, waiting for me to cave, but I wasn't going to. My dad worked too hard to let them take this away from me. The worst part was knowing they didn't even care about me. They just wanted the money. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a bank account, and that hurt more than anything. But if they thought I was going to roll over and let them take what my dad left for me, they had another thing coming. I was so angry. I called Aunt Deborah again. She had always been my rock, the one person in my family who actually gave a damn about me. I told her everything. Rachel's manipulative guilt trips, Greg's entitled attitude, and Laura acting like she deserved a piece of my future just because she existed. Aunt Deborah listened quietly, and then she dropped a bomb. You know, your dad left you a letter before he passed, she said. I was supposed to give it to you when you turned 18, but given the circumstances, I think you need to see it now. A letter? I asked, my heart racing. Yes, she said. Alan was always worried Rachel would try something like this. He wanted you to have something in writing, just in case. I couldn't believe it. My dad had known. He'd known what kind of person Mom was, even before they divorced, and he'd prepared for this. Aunt Deborah said she'd send the letter right away, and 2 days later, it arrived. I remember sitting on my bed, staring at the envelope. My name was written on the front in my dad's handwriting, and seeing it made me feel like he was still here with me. My hands shook as I opened it, and I had to blink back tears as I unfolded the paper. The letter was long, but I read every word like my life depended on it. My dad started by saying how much he loved me, and how proud he was of the person I was becoming. He wrote about how he'd always believed in me, and how he knew I'd do great things with my life. But then it got into the serious stuff. He explained that he'd set up my college fund in a way that Mom could never touch it. He'd made sure it was locked down legally, with Aunt Deborah as the trustee, because he didn't trust Mom not to blow through it. And then came the part that completely floored me. He wrote about how Mom's affair with Greg wasn't the only one. She'd been cheating on him with multiple men. Multiple. While he was working late nights to provide for us, she was sneaking around with different guys, living some double life. He even went on with details about her betrayal. Or betrayals, to be honest. She betrayed me in ways I can't put into words, Dad wrote. But I stayed quiet because I didn't want to put you through an ugly court battle. I thought keeping the peace was better for you. I regret that now, because I can see how much pain it caused you. I'm so sorry, Nora. You deserved better. I couldn't stop crying as I read. My dad had known everything. Every lie, every betrayal, and he'd tried to shield me from it. But at the same time, it broke my heart to think about how much he must have suffered in silence. Then came the part that changed everything. Rachel is not someone you can trust. She will manipulate you, guilt you, and use you if you let her. Please, Nora, don't let her take what I worked so hard to give you. This money is for your future, for your education. It's not hers, and it's not Greg's. And I hope you remember that no matter what she says, this is your life, not hers. After I finished the letter, I sat there for a long time, just holding it. It felt like Dad was speaking directly to me, telling me to stand up for myself. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The next morning, I waited until Mom, Greg, and Laura were all in the kitchen before I walked in with the letter. I didn't say anything at first. I just handed it to Rachel and stood there while she read it. Her face turned white as she scanned the page. Her hands started to shake, and she actually sat down like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. "What is this?" Greg asked, snatching the letter from her. Rachel tried to grab it back, but it was too late. Greg's eyes darted over the words, and his expression went from confused to furious in about 5 seconds. "You had other affairs?" he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "You told me it was just Alan, that he was neglecting you. You lied to me." Rachel stammered, trying to come up with some excuse, but Greg wasn't having it. "You slept with my friend while we were together," he demanded. "And how many others, Rachel?" "How many?" Laura, who had been quietly eating cereal, suddenly froze. "Wait, Mom, is this true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom didn't answer. She just sat there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Greg slammed the letter down on the table and pointed at Mom. "We're done," he said. "I'll be filing for divorce first thing tomorrow." "Greg, please, let's talk about this," Mom begged, tears streaming down her face. "Talk about what?" he snapped. "How you lied to me for years? How you made me out to be some hero for saving you and Nora when the whole time you were the problem? I'm done, Rachel. I'm done with your lies." He stormed out of the house and Laura followed him, looking shell-shocked. Mom sat there, staring at the letter, and for the first time in my life, she looked completely defeated. She turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to show him that," she said. "Yes, I did," I replied. "You don't get to use my dad's money to clean up the mess you made. This is on you, Mom." "Not me." She tried to argue, but I walked out before she could get another word in. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of her anymore. After Greg stormed out, the house felt weird. Quiet, but not the good kind of quiet. It was like the air was heavy, and I couldn't breathe right. Mom spent most of that day locked in her bedroom. I guess she was hoping Greg would cool off and come back, but I already knew he was gone for good. The next morning, Greg came back with a couple of suitcases and some boxes. Laura was with him, standing awkwardly near the door. She wasn't her usual smug self. If anything, she looked embarrassed. "We're leaving," Greg said flatly, not even looking at Mom. Mom came downstairs in her bathrobe, her face puffy like she'd been crying all night. She tried to block the door. "Greg, please," she said, her voice cracking. "Let's talk about this. You can't just leave." Greg didn't even hesitate. "Watch me," he said. He pushed past her and started packing up his watches and some other stuff from the living room. Mom followed him, begging the whole time. "Don't do this," she pleaded. "We can work through it. You know I love you." Greg stopped and turned to her. "Love me?" he said, laughing bitterly. "You loved Alan too, right? And all those other guys?" "Yeah, I think I've had enough of your love." It was brutal. I almost felt bad for Mom. Almost. But then I remembered all the years she spent treating me like garbage and trying to take the one thing my dad left me. Whatever sympathy I had disappeared real fast. Laura didn't say much while Greg packed. She just stood there, avoiding eye contact with me. I wasn't sure if she was mad, embarrassed, or just confused about what was happening. Finally, as they were about to leave, she muttered, "I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not after everything she'd done. But it felt like maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize how much of a nightmare she'd been. Greg and Laura left, and Mom just stood in the doorway, staring after them like she couldn't believe it. When she turned around and saw me standing there, her face twisted into something ugly. "This is your fault," she snapped. "My fault?" I said, crossing my arms. "You lied to everyone, cheated on my dad, and tried to steal my college fund. Don't blame me because it finally caught up to you." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just stomped upstairs and slammed her door. The next few days were tense. Rachel barely left her room, and when she did, she refused to talk to me. Honestly, I was fine with that. It was easier not having to deal with her constant guilt trips and manipulation. But things got worse when Greg started moving forward with the divorce. Apparently, he froze their joint accounts, which left her completely broke. She didn't have a job. She hadn't worked a day since she married my dad, and now she was panicking. I overheard her on the phone with one of her friends, crying about how Greg had left her with nothing. I wanted to laugh. The irony of Mom complaining about being left with nothing when she'd been trying to take everything from me was almost too much. Then she started trying to get me involved. She came into my room one night, looking all sad and defeated. "Nora," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, already bracing myself for whatever manipulation was coming next. "I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "Greg froze the accounts, and I don't have any money right now. Things are tight." I just stared at her. "And?" She sighed, like I was supposed to feel sorry for her. "I was thinking, maybe you could use a little of the college fund to help out, just until I get back on my feet." I almost laughed in her face. "No," I said firmly. "Nora," she said, her voice sharp. "I'm your mother." "You're the same person who tried to steal that money for Laura," I snapped. "Now you want me to bail you out? No way." A week later, Greg officially filed for divorce. Mom was furious, pacing around the house and muttering under her breath about how unfair it all was. She kept trying to call Greg, but he wasn't answering. All right, so here's where everything stands now. It's been a few months since Greg and Laura left, and honestly, life has been weird. Not bad, just different. Greg followed through with the divorce, and it hit Mom harder than I expected. She was completely broke. It was almost surreal watching her scramble to sell off all her prized possessions just to keep the lights on. The woman who once acted like she was above everyone else now couldn't even afford to order takeout without thinking twice. It got so bad that she started working at a department store in town. Rachel, who used to brag about her perfect life and throw these ridiculous dinner parties, was now standing behind a register, scanning people's groceries and folding clothes for minimum wage. I don't mean to sound petty, But seeing her brought down to earth like that, it was satisfying. Laura and I have been talking more, which is still kind of weird for me. She texted me out of nowhere a few weeks after she moved out, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. At first, I wasn't sure if I should even respond, but curiosity got me. I agreed to meet up. And honestly, it wasn't as awkward as I thought it would be. She looked different, less like the spoiled brat I grew up with, and more like an actual person. She admitted she'd been horrible to me, and said she was embarrassed about how she used to act. I guess I didn't realize how much I was taking everything for granted, she said, stirring her coffee nervously. When Dad started selling his watches to pay bills, it kind of hit me that I've been living in this bubble my whole life. It was weird hearing her talk like that, like she'd actually grown up. She even apologized for all the crap she pulled, including the sweater incident. I know I can't fix what I did, she said, but I really want to try to be better. I appreciated the apology, but I told her straight up that it was going to take time for me to fully trust her. She didn't get defensive or try to push me. She just nodded and said, I get it. Since then, we've been talking here and there. It's not like we're best friends or anything, but it's nice to have a relationship that doesn't feel like a battlefield. She's doing well at community college and working part-time at a bakery. Apparently, she's actually enjoying it, and is even talking about transferring to a 4-year school once she finishes her associate's degree. As for Greg, I haven't seen him since the divorce went through. He texted me once to apologize for how he treated me while we lived together, which honestly surprised me. I didn't realize how much damage I was doing, he wrote. I should have been a better stepdad. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive him, but it did feel good to hear him admit he screwed up. The real MVP through all of this has been Aunt Deborah. I honestly don't know what I would have done without her. She's been my rock from the beginning, and she's helped me navigate everything, from legal stuff with the college fund to just giving me a place to stay when I needed a break from Rachel's chaos. Speaking of the college fund, it's still untouched, just like Dad intended. I'm finally getting ready to start college in the fall, and I can't even put into words how excited I am. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Like I'm finally moving forward instead of being stuck in the middle of everyone else's mess. Mom tried one last time to guilt me into giving her money before I left. She cornered me in the kitchen one morning, looking all tired and defeated. I'm your mother, she said, like that meant something. You owe me. I just looked at her and said, no, I don't. I don't owe you anything. Then I grabbed my coffee and walked out. So now, here I am. I'm moving into the dorms next week, and I can't wait to start this new chapter of my life. It feels surreal, knowing I'm finally getting out of that house for good. I'm leaving behind all the drama, the manipulation, and the toxic relationships. I still think about my dad a lot. I keep his letter in a little box with his old watch, and whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, I read it. It reminds me of why I'm doing all of this, why I worked so hard and fought so hard to protect the future he wanted for me. Sometimes I feel a little guilty for leaving Mom behind. As much as she's hurt me, she's still my mom. But then I remember all the times she put herself first, all the times she tried to take what wasn't hers. And I remind myself that this isn't my responsibility. She made her choices, and now she's living with the consequences. To anyone reading this who's dealing with toxic family members, I just want to say, you don't owe them your future. You don't have to sacrifice your happiness just to keep the peace. It's okay to stand up for yourself, even if it means walking away. I'm not saying it's easy, it's not. But sometimes putting yourself first is the only way to move forward. Anyway, that's my story. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. And honestly, that's enough for me.